Minnesota is officially ground zero for the biggest welfare fraud operation in America. And the wildest part is, an entire network of people was quietly flipping your tax dollars into million-dollar homes, luxury cars, and designer lifestyles while the state says they just look the other way. And yet, if you ask Ilhan Omar, somehow, they're the victims. But this time she can't spin it. She can't twist the story to fit her identity politics agenda. The receipts are out, the reporters are digging, and the clock is running out on the excuses, because you don't get this level of coordinated fraud without people in power ignoring the alarms. And now the truth is spilling out into the open. As always, the best way to show you support and that you enjoyed the content is by smashing that thumbs up. That tells me you like the video. And subscribe for more breakdowns like this. Ilhan Omar's tangled web of Somali fraud just keeps unraveling. And as more evidence comes out, the real question isn't if she knew, it's how much and how early. But instead of answering that, Omar falls back on the same playbook she's used for years now. Turn every criticism into racism and every legitimate question into an attack on her identity. It's her favorite shield, the victim narrative, because when she frames herself as the target of persecution, she doesn't have to address the allegations. She doesn't have to explain the warning signs she ignored. And she doesn't have to confront the fact the fraud in her own district has reached historic levels, while questions about her own legal and ethical conduct continue to pile up unanswered. But that strategy is finally cracking. The evidence is mounting, the reporters aren't backing down, and the facts are catching up faster than she can twist the narrative to protect her.
So 20 past the hour now on a Monday morning, the glare of the spotlight now falling on Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar. Questions popping up about what she knew and when about a massive COVID fraud scheme in her district. Talking billions, could be billions, at least $1 billion, could go higher. Mike Tobin's got more on that now. Mike, good morning to you. What do you have?
Well, good morning, Bill. And as you mentioned, Minnesota Democratic Congresswoman Ilhan Omar has been in the crosshairs. She made the statement that there were insufficient guardrails to defrauded programs like Feed the Future. Speaking on Face the Nation, she defended against the fact that all but a handful of the suspects and convicts in this case are from Minnesota's Somali community.
This also has an impact on Somalis because we are also taxpayers in Minnesota. We also could have benefited from the program and the money that was stolen. And so it's been really frustrating for people to not acknowledge the fact that we're also, as Minnesotans, as taxpayers, really upset and angry about the fraud that has occurred.
Analysts with whom we have been speaking say it's unlikely Omar would not have some exposure to the corruption. She introduced a legislation that created the program that was defrauded to the tune of $250 million. She also held a victory party in 2018 at a restaurant called Safari, owned by Salim Ahmed Saeed, a major player convicted in the scheme.
Yeah, so when Ilhan Omar suddenly claims ignorance, give me a break. You can't be that close to the community at the center of a massive welfare scheme. You can't publicly vouch for these same bad actors and then pretend you were blindsided somehow when the feds arrived with indictments. Really? And here's the real kicker. While Omar plays the "they're attacking my community" card, this is racism, reporters are exposing the actual money trail. Money meant to feed kids and support vulnerable families, being funneled into luxury lifestyles, shell companies, off-the-book payments, and yes, multi-million-dollar homes. This is why her spin is collapsing, because the receipts don't lie, and the lifestyle these fraudsters were living definitely doesn't look like victims. Which brings us to the core of this entire story. Reporters expose Somali scammers buying million-dollar homes with the welfare funds.
5 Investigates is tracking your stolen tax dollars. And tonight we reveal how some fraudsters are still benefiting from their crimes even after being charged and convicted.
Investigative reporter Eric Rasmussen has been following the Feeding Our Future fraud for nearly 4 years. And he's here with what's standing in the way of getting your money back.
Well, we do know a lot of the $250 million stolen from taxpayers is tied up in property and other things. Federal prosecutors say they're seizing it, but at least in some high-profile cases, viewers told us that still has not happened. So we went to check it out. All right, here I go. From this 5-bed, 4.5 bath in Washington County to a $1 million house in Plymouth, complete with an indoor basketball court. My name is Eric Rasmussen. I'm a reporter with KSTP. Another right off this county road in Burnsville. Do you know if the government is trying to take this house? They're not? We had to see these properties for ourselves. Each house owned by people convicted of fraud, connected to Feeding Our Future. $250 million meant to help kids in need, stolen at the height of the pandemic.
We've property all over the state, in different parts of the country.
But long after prosecutors filed paperwork to seize properties purchased with stolen taxpayer dollars, neighbors told 5 Investigates that still has not happened. Is it fair for the public to want answers about what's being done?
Absolutely. It's our money.
Mark Osler is a professor at the St. Thomas Law School and a former federal prosecutor.
This is something in criminal law that too often gets forgotten, the money side of it. You know, we pay attention to the body when someone walks into court, when they're taken away to prison. But the harm is often in the money.
Take former Safari restaurant owner Salim Saeed. 5 guilty verdicts now. A jury convicted him and Feeding Our Future founder Amy Bach nearly 9 months ago. But we found Saeed and his wife are still the official owners of this $1.1 million house in Plymouth. Fraud money funded their $952,000 down payment in 2021. And county records show they've racked up more than $50,000 in delinquent property taxes since then.
Have you ever had a moment that changed your life? One accident, one employer who doesn't care, one hospital bill you couldn't pay. That's how quick life can change. And when it does, you realize something fast. The big companies, the insurance giants, they don't care about you. They've got teams of lawyers whose only job is to protect their bottom line. But who's protecting you? There's a reason why it feels like traffic always jams when you're running late. Just like there's a reason Morgan & Morgan is America's largest injury law firm. For over 35 years, Morgan & Morgan has fought for the people, not the powerful. With 1,000 plus attorneys and more than 100 offices nationwide, they've recovered over $25 billion for more than 500,000 clients just like you. Whether you're a 41-year-old family man in Florida, struck by a driver who ran a red light, Morgan & Morgan secured a $9.3 million verdict, or a father and Little League coach who suffered lasting injuries in a car crash, Morgan & Morgan secured a $6.1 million verdict. When you hire them, it's like hiring a legal army that has your back. Starting a claim is simple. You can get started right now from your phone. No hassle. You can click the link in the description or scan the QR code on the screen to see if you have a claim. Their fee is free unless they win. Because when life changes in an instant, you deserve a law firm that's ready to fight for you. Now that the scam is blown wide open, a lot of these folks who were living like pandemic era moguls can't even afford the property taxes on the luxury homes they bought with welfare money. Think about that for a second. They weren't buying homes because they made it. Well, because they didn't. They were buying homes because they thought the fraud would never be exposed. They thought the state would keep looking the other way and no one would ever find out. They thought the money would keep flowing forever. So they never had an exit strategy or an endpoint in mind. But fraud money runs out, indictments hit, bank accounts get frozen, and suddenly $1 million properties turn into financial anchors. This is what happens when fake wealth meets real responsibility. It collapses fast because these homes weren't symbols of success, because they weren't successful. And now the same properties that were supposed to be trophies of their success, that they stole money and bought a fake dream with, they can't even afford to maintain it.
No one responded to the note I left, but a week later we did see someone leaving in a Cadillac. Prosecutors say they have to wait for Salim Saeed to be sentenced before they can take the property. But that doesn't explain this one. Records show the owner of this house in Willerny is Jonathan Ross, the husband of Sharon Ross.
We want to keep that program going.
The former director of House of Refuge Twin Cities was sentenced to prison in February for her role in the Feeding Our Future fraud. That should have cleared the way for the government to take the property, but we found a car registered to Ross's husband still sitting in the driveway. We are also asking about this house in Burnsville, owned by former Feeding Our Future employee Abdikerm Idle. Do you know Mr. Idle? Right before being named in the first indictments in 2022, Amy Bach's right-hand man fled the country. Do you know where he is? That's the voice of Idle's ex-wife, according to a second person who spoke to me from behind the front door.
Ex-husband.
Sure enough, a month after investigators say Idle put down $95,000 on his new house, records show he and his wife filed for divorce. A mutual agreement, living in the same house, they wrote, right before Idle disappeared.
Instead of having to go through that person and try to extradite him and all of that, we can go directly after the property. I'm sure that's what's being considered. But it's still frustrating we don't have the body, too, that individual who was so culpable.
I'm going to leave my information here. So what else can be done?
Public attention always helps. So what you're doing is certainly going to help.
For now, Osler says taxpayers will have to be patient.
The most likely outcome is that these properties will be seized, they'll be sold, the public will get the money back.
For weeks now, we've been asking prosecutors specific follow-up questions about these three properties. And I can tell you in just the last 45 minutes, I got a call back from the lead prosecutor, Joe Thompson. He says they have to let the full legal process play out. In each of these cases, he added that the value of what they have seized so far is significant, somewhere between $60 and $70 million. And I can tell you when I went back to check court records today, which we've been doing a lot lately, I did find the U.S. Attorney's Office just reached a settlement to recover an additional $227,000 that was tied up in a property in Kentucky. That one was previously owned by another defendant in these Feeding Our Future cases that was sentenced earlier this summer. So the bottom line is the process is happening, maybe not as fast as some people would like.
Slowly. Okay.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Eric.
Thank you so much.
A lot for.
Just go straight after the property, straight after the house, because at the end of the day, taxpayers want one thing. They want to see one thing happen. Get the money back as much as you can, at least. If the guy wants to stay overseas, I mean, it is what it is, fine, stay there. But the wife, the kids, whoever's living in the home that was bought with stolen funds, yeah, they're going to have to go too. And that's not being heartless. That's not political. That's just justice. Fraud money bought the house, so the house goes too. That's not abnormal in big fraud cases, drug cases, things of that nature. But that was the scam that Tim Walz and the Democrat leaders in Minnesota ignored with those fake nonprofits. You know, the biggest scams in America aren't happening in dark alleys. They're happening through community organizations that nobody audits, nobody regulates, and nobody questions, because the moment you ask for oversight, somebody screams racism. This is the same playbook we watched in California with homelessness. Billions of dollars poured into nonprofits that promised solutions, and what did the taxpayers get? Tents, needles, crimes, and the executives driving luxury cars. There's no accountability, no transparency, and definitely no consequences. It's a pipeline. Taxpayer dollars, nonprofit executives, politicians, kickbacks, repeat. And here we are in Minnesota watching the exact same pattern. A fraud empire built through nonprofits, social service money, and fake community programs, all while Governor Tim Walz sat on his hands. Whistleblowers inside his own agencies tried to warn him. Employees filed reports. Inspectors raised red flags. But Walz was too terrified of being called racist, anti-immigrant, or anti-Somali to actually do his job. So rather than confront the fraud, he silenced the people sounding the alarm. And in that vacuum of leadership, the scammers flourish, stealing millions meant for hungry kids, vulnerable families, and real communities in need.
Details come to light about scams that bilk taxpayers out of what could be more than $1 billion. Yes, they sound like Dr. Evil. It's $1 billion. Welcome to a new hour of America Reports. I'm John Roberts in Washington. That's real money, Sandra.
That is real money. Good to be with you on this Friday, John. I'm Sandra Smith in New York. So one startling example sticking out concerns a program to help recovering addicts find stable housing. Initial estimates for the housing program was for just under $3 million annually. But an indictment shows grifters fraudulently billed Medicaid more than $100 million last year alone. Garrett Tenney is live on this out of Chicago for us. What do you have, Garrett?
Well, Sandra, several of the whistleblowers in Minnesota have told state lawmakers that by the time these investigations are through, they believe the actual size of this fraud, the amount of taxpayer dollars that has been stolen, could be higher than $8 billion. We are already seeing some of that. 2 days into the Small Business Administration's investigation, Secretary Kelly Loeffler says the agency has uncovered at least $1 million in PPP fraud. And the state itself is now looking into the possibility of fraud in another Medicaid program. Minnesota's Department of Human Services is now pausing the issuing of new licenses for disability service providers over concerns of fraud after an explosion in the number of applications for new licenses over the past 5 years, going up 283%, while the number of people needing those services only increased by 25%. Governor Tim Walz, who is up for re-election, is under fire for all of this happening under his watch, but he says they have investigated every claim of fraud that's come in, something whistleblowers dispute, and says the state is taking the steps it needs to keep it from happening again.
And that right there is what Tim Walz can't spin, because for years, while insiders were raising red flags, while the whistleblowers inside his own agencies were warning about widespread fraud, while millions of taxpayer dollars were funneling into shell nonprofits, luxury cars, and million-dollar homes, Tim Walz did nothing. And here's the kicker. He wasn't alone. While this fraud was exploding in her own district, Ilhan Omar wasn't sounding any alarms either. She wasn't demanding oversight, audits, accountability, or protection of taxpayer dollars. No, she was defending the very networks now being exposed, attacking critics, and painting every legitimate question as an attack of racism. And now that the feds are charging people, now that the reporters are exposing the properties, now that the evidence is overwhelming, suddenly they both want to act like they've been on top of this from the very beginning. Give me a break. Walz wants to pretend he's the governor restoring order, and Omar wants to pretend she was a whistleblower all along. But the reality is simple. If either one of them had done their job when the warning signs first showed up, Minnesota wouldn't be the epicenter of the largest welfare fraud scandal in America. The money wouldn't be gone, the mansions wouldn't have been bought, and the scammers wouldn't have fled the country. What we're seeing right now isn't leadership. It's cleanup duty after the house is already burned down. And so now you got Walz and Omar trying to rewrite their roles in this story, but the receipts tell a different truth. By the time they decided to take action, the fraudsters had already cashed out. But now I want to hear from you. Drop your comments down below. As always, the best way to show your support and that you enjoyed the content, smash that thumbs up. That tells me you like the video, and subscribe for more breakdowns like this.